Hi guys, today we are going to discuss about entity framework. Okay, so before that we already discussed how to retrieve the data from database data by using AD.NET, by using Dapper, right? So today the turns come for entity framework. So without wasting any time, guys, we will start the things. But before that, please like and subscribe this channel so that you can get more notifications for other new concepts. Okay, so let's start the things. So as we know that entity framework is one of the boom which is going on the market, where a lot of people either with the MVC or MVC core, they are using this entity framework for accessing the data from database. So what is this exactly, this entity framework? So by the name itself we can understand that it is a framework which provide a lot of predefined classes and a lot of predefined methods. That's right, it is a framework which contain all the classes, methods, which basically interact with the database to access the data from the database for us. Okay. Now, if you see this, the first point which is saying that it is an open source. Yes, it is open source, and it is ORM framework. It is also called as an ORM framework. So, what is ORM? We'll understand later. But now try to understand that as it is free, as it is open source, easily integrating with any type of .NET application, either Windows, either web applications, we can easily do it. This by using this entity framework, we can access data very easily. We can access data very easily for a console application, Windows application, or our web application. We can use there and we can access that data. And it is developed by Microsoft and supported by Microsoft. It enables developers to work with the data using objects of domain-specific classes without focusing on the underlying database tables and columns where this data is stored. So the other point which we need to understand that it's totally focused on the specific classes. See, when we start writing a coding, we know that we generally write business logic, we write our SQL code in our front end application, right? So when we write our SQL code, when we write our C sharp code in our front end application, so these two code will go to the like database generally. That SQL code only will go there, but C sharp will help you to move that particular SQL query to the database, and then database will understand that and perform like insert, update, delete operation, right? So here you need to know the table. Here you need to know the database which you're trying to interact it, right? I'm talking about AD.NET. I'm talking about AD.NET where we used to do all this type of things before, right? We used to write a queries in our front-end applications. We used to write our database name. So everything we used to write it. We need to focus on both the things. That SQL query, we need to focus on C sharp classes. We need to focus on tables, columns, everything we need to focus it. But here in our entity framework, we don't need to deal with that all. We just focus on the classes. These classes will help us to interact with the database tables at a higher level. So we just say that, okay, this is my employee model, this is an object. So by using that name of that object, I can directly access the total data from the database. So here entity framework recommend that don't treat your database object in your front-end application code. Treat that as a C sharp code. Use the tables, take the table as a C sharp class object. Don't treat that particular table as a SQL code. So I can tell you like one problem where we can like resolve by like entity framework. Previously, when the people used to change from SQL to Oracle, Oracle to MySQL, their project, lot of queries is need to be changes. We need to be master on that, and because of that only, a lot of people like get a lot of problems in their projects. Even the developer need to learn a lot of new things. It is not a good like Easy job, you can say that. But when entity framework came, it say that as an entity framework, I can have like for SQL Server one entity framework, I can have like for Oracle, I can have for MySQL one entity framework. So I just interact with my SQL Server. Okay, I interact with my SQL Server, and me as an entity framework will provide you some predefined classes to the front-end application. That classes is going to be same for Oracle entity framework, SQL entity framework, MySQL entity framework. It doesn't bother of it like the code. So as that classes is going to be same where the front end application is going to interact it. So that query, who is going to write it? The entity framework is going to write it behalf of you. So this is a benefit what you are going to get it when you are going to use the entity framework. So you don't need to bother of it learning a new database language. You don't need to focus on learning a Oracle, SQL, or some other stuff. So that's what entity framework will help you to do it with the advantage of it. Okay. Now, as I already told you, we can directly focus on the classes and access the data without underlining, focusing that which table, database, we are going to access it. With the entity framework, developers can work at higher level of abstractions when they deal with the data and can create and maintain data orientation application with less code compared to the traditional application. Hope you remember that in AD.NET we used to write 15 lines of code to just to get the data. But when you use entity framework, you just need to use only a single line of code for insert, for get, for update, for delete. So that's a advantage what you're going to get it when you're going to use the entity framework, because it's provide predefined methods, right? Predefined classes. So internally, all that operation insert, update, delete, it's going to be happen internally for us. The queries are going to be generated automatically behalf of developer by the entity framework. So that's a benefit when we are going to use an entity framework. Okay. Now let's go for another thing. Now entity framework is an object relational mapper that enables .NET developer to work with a database using .NET objects. So it's also called as object relational mapper, guys. So what is the meaning of object relational mapper? And let's try to understand that, like what exactly it's saying is. So I have one diagram here through which we can understand what is entity framework. If you see this, this is a front-end application. Front-end application previously will talk to the back-end application. So they used to communicate with each other. Previously, we were not having any entity framework concept. So here in the front-end application, we need to write C# code, we need to write SQL code, both the code we need to write it. Then it will go to the database. Database will understand that and give the things to us. If any other database is there, means again front-end application need to change the code. Again, if I have another database, if I'm writing here, again the front-end application need to change the code, right? So if you don't want that front-end application to change the code, okay, and it should interact with the database. So if you want such type of things, then you should go for entity framework. So how entity framework will help you is, now front-end entity framework say that, oh, front-end application, you should not write SQL code here. You should write only C# code. Why you focus on everything? So just write C# code. So entity framework suggests to the front-end application that treat each and every database object as a class object. So that's why you're going to access the tables. You're going to access the tables by using the objects. Okay, by using the objects. So now whenever the front-end application want that any data from the database, front-end application say that, oh, entity framework, I want some data from the database. So entity framework, what it does it will interact with the database and say that, oh, database, he want like some data. Can you give me that? So entity framework will internally generate the queries and give the data to the front-end application. And in that way, the front-end application will get the data. Now, as we say that it is an ORM model means object relational mapping. So in that object is nothing but C# class. Relational mapping is your database table and your C# class objects are going to map with each other. Now, if you see this entity framework create two important classes. Two important classes it will create it. One class name is model class. So this is our model class. And another class it will create as context class. Another class it will create as a context class. So model class will have these properties, and context class will have connection string and the table names. These are the two things you will find it in the context class. So it's mean that the table which I want to connect it, the connection string to which I need to connect it. So all these things you will find in the context class. So basically entity framework will have two important classes. If you understand these two classes, you will understand everything. Okay. So here we are trying to understand that entity framework say to the front end application and back end application that don't interact with each other directly. I will be the middleware between both of you. So if front end application want anything means, then it will call to the entity framework. Entity framework say that which table you want it. So in a context class, the table will be there. So that table, the front end application will get it. And with that, he will send the data to the view page, and the view page will display that information for us. So it's mean that all the interaction with the front end application will happen with the entity framework. Now, entity framework, what it does it, the table what we have it. So that table will have like some properties like ID, name, and salary. So whichever the property is mapping with that particular column. So these are the columns of database. So ID matching, name matching, salary and employee salary is not matching. So what it does it will give this ID, this name record as a collection of record to the particular front end application, and it will not give the salary because this column name and this column names, this property names are not mapping. So whatever the things are mapping, that only the things is going to be given to the front end application, and the front end application will take this and then let us give that data to the entity framework. Means that it will give to the front end application. Okay. So that's what we are saying, right? It is a object relational mapping that enable developers to work with database using .NET object. It eliminates need of most data access code. Now we don't need to write a lot of code here. We just write single line of code. That's enough to access the data from the database. Okay. Now, other thing which you need to understand that entity framework now it is not only for Windows application, it is also for Linux and Mac operating system. It's a cross-platform. For entity framework core, we got one entity framework. Now, entity framework, it's available for .NET framework as well as for core. Okay. Entity framework create one data model that is model class. So this model class will have a properties get and set. With that, it will retrieve the data. It will save the data, underlining the database. Even we can use that uh, entity framework model, and we can write queries to perform insert, update, delete, rejoining, and getting like first, getting the last record, descending order, ascending order. All this type of queries with a relational database, we can do it. Now, tracking entity framework keep track of changes occurred into the instance of your entities, which need to be submitted to the database. So it will track each and everything. Entity framework will track like what property you have made changes, when you made the changes, before what was the thing was there, everything it will track it. And for executing your statements like insert, update, and operations, it use save changes method, which will execute to underlying database the query. Either if you're going to use asynchronous, then it will use save changes async method. Okay. Now concurrency, entity framework use optimistic concurrency by default, protecting overriding changes made to the another user since database was fetched from the database. Transaction, entity framework perform automatic transactions management. So all these things it will do it like transaction, like saving a data, and it will not save the data until all that operations successfully happen. So all these things transaction will be done, rollback will be done if one of the condition also not truly happen. Caching also it will do it. So like it will store the data so that not repeated same data. When we retrieve it, we should go and bring perform the database operations instead of it from cache memory. It will take it. It also provide like some built-in conventions which we follow it to create a model, and we also follow like configurations to set up and attributes to on a particular applications. Migrations, we will do it. And migrations, basically, we can use commands also to update our changes on the database. So all these things we can do it in our entity framework. Now, entity framework like have three types of approaches, guys: database first approach, code first approach, and model first approach. Okay. So all these three approaches we are going to learn in our next video. So please see that all the database approach, model first approach, what is code first approach, every approach I have defined with example in the next video. So please see that every practical things which I have, which you needed to learn it about entity framework, I have added in the video. Please see it and learn it from there. And if you have understood this concept, entity framework, please like and subscribe this video, guys. Thank you.